I'm Veronica Dudo. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, new leadership, changes at the top for the Islamic Republic of Iran, how the U.S. is responding as the war drags on into its second week. Papal ambassador, the Pope appoints a new nuncio to the United States, what we know about Archbishop Caccia, plus an assignment for us all.
You have the urgent and liberating task of showing the closeness of Jesus.
The inspiring message Pope Leo brought to his flock during his Lenten journey to the parishes of Rome. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Francis of Rome. Our top story tonight. In defiance of threats by President Donald Trump, Iran names a new supreme leader. President Trump told Fox News he's not happy about it. He wanted his own approval of the move. That's just one of several major developments coming out of the war with Iran. Also, oil prices skyrocketed, and there are even calls to protect an Iranian soccer team. This as both sides continue launching attacks. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
That's right, Veronica. Good evening to you. That new leader of Iran is Mojtaba Khamenei. He is the son of the supreme leader who was killed just as the war broke out. And today the Trump administration giving its assessment of how the ongoing war is shaping up.
As Iran fires missiles and drones at Israel and Gulf Arab states, and the U.S. and Israel bomb targets across Iran. At the State Department today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. is well on its way to destroying Iran's ability to make and launch ballistic missiles.
Every single day, this regime in Iran has less missiles, has less launchers, their factories work less, and their navy is being eviscerated. And the world is going to be a safer and a better place when this mission is accomplished.
Rubio says the Iranian regime is trying to hold the world hostage.
They are attacking their neighbors. They are attacking neighboring countries, their energy infrastructure, their civilian population. They're attacking embassies. This is a terrorist government.
Meanwhile, crowds pledge allegiance to Iran's new supreme leader. The secretive 56-year-old cleric, only the third supreme leader in the history of the Islamic Republic, has close ties to the paramilitary Revolutionary Guard. His appointment suggesting Tehran is not close to giving up on what it considers a fight for the Islamic theocracy's survival. President Donald Trump telling reporters on Air Force One this past weekend,
but we don't want to come back every 5 years or every 10 years and do this, so we want to pick a president that's not going to be leading their country into a war.
The president of the European Union Commission says many Iranians celebrated the demise of the country's longtime supreme leader.
There should be no tears shed for the Iranian regime. This regime has inflicted death and imposed repression on its own people.
This past weekend at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, President Trump attended the dignified transfer of 6 U.S. soldiers killed in a drone strike in Kuwait. Today, Vice President J.D. Vance told a group of firefighters he was honored to attend and asked them for prayers.
I just want to say that if you are the praying type, and I certainly am, I hope you'll spare a prayer for the 6 souls that we lost, for the 7th soul who will be coming home tonight, and for all of their families.
This as the Pentagon identified the 7th U.S. service member killed in combat during the Iran War, Army Staff Sergeant Benjamin Pennington of Kentucky.
And Veronica, also tonight, earlier today, President Trump called the Australian Prime Minister. He is seeking asylum for the Iranian women's national soccer team currently playing in Australia. President Trump is worried what could happen to them if they go back to Iran. Veronica?
That's certainly getting a lot of attention. Also, Owen, I understand the president commented on those rising energy prices.
Yeah, you sure did. You know, we've all seen it just now, all of a sudden, just like that. Driving down the street, you see those higher gas prices at the pumps. People are feeling it. It's a pinch in their wallet, right? The president posted on social media, short-term oil prices, I'll quote it here, is a very small price to pay for safety and peace. And Veronica, I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Owen. Norwegian police are investigating an explosion outside the U.S. Embassy in Oslo, Norway. No injuries were reported. Police say they received reports of a loud bang or explosion around 1 a.m. Sunday local time. The blast was caused by some sort of incendiary device. It was placed inside a backpack left outside the entrance of the Consular Affairs office at the embassy. Investigators believe the target was the embassy and are searching for suspects and a motive. The U.S. State Department says it is aware of the incident and has opened its own investigation into the matter. We're joined now by Farhad Rezai, political scientist specializing in Iran. Thanks so much for being here. Now, the Islamic Republic has named its new ruler, the son of the late supreme leader. How are Iranians reacting to this news?
Iranians are divided over this appointment of Mujtaba Khamenei as the third supreme leader of Iran. Obviously, Iranian people are angry. They have been angry with the previous supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, who was eliminated by the joint Israeli and American air campaign. But now they are unhappy with this appointment of Mujtaba Khamenei, his son, because they believe that this is just the continuation of the same policies by the regime, and obviously they're unhappy with it. Also, in the political establishment and religious establishment, there are strong voices who are suddenly unhappy with the appointment of Mujtaba Khamenei for various reasons. One reason is that they say Mujtaba has no religious credential, just like his father. Of course, he is much lower than his father. At the time of his father's appointment 30 years ago, he was not an Ayatollah, but overnight he was entitled with this religious credential. And now the same story with Mujtaba. So that's why many religious figures, strong religious figures in the city of Qom, are unhappy with it, and they say that this is the choice of Revolutionary Guards. He was appointed by the Revolutionary Guards, not by the assembly of experts that is in charge of appointing the supreme leader. And for that matter, they are unhappy with it.
And that continues to be a point of contention. Now, Israel has been hitting oil facilities in Iran. How long do you think those attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure will continue, and what impact is this having?
Well, I don't think Israel has attacked the oil facilities. It was just a oil storage in Tehran, and that was apparently used by the Revolutionary Guards and security apparatus for their military machines. So I think this should not be mistaken with the oil facilities. I don't really think that Americans and Israelis are interested in attacking, by attacking, I mean destroying the oil installation of Iran, because they understand that if the regime is changed after this war, that oil facilities belong to the people, not to the regime. And then let's say it's a big if the regime changes. I don't think with the air campaign alone, the regime is going to change. I mean, if you look at the history, airstrike have never toppled any regime if it's only just airstrike, unless it is combined with ground forces. And now we can see that the objective of the American government and the Israeli government so far, they say that it's just to destroy the Iranian offensive power, not the changing the regime. And they haven't promised for regime change. So that's a big if here.
Farhad Rezai, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
For the second time in the past week, NATO air defenses shot down yet another ballistic missile that was fired from Iran. As it entered Turkish airspace, it was destroyed. Turkish defense officials issued a stark warning it will take any necessary steps against threats. So as all of this continues, should other NATO nations take a more active role in the war? U.S. lawmakers have mixed feelings. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with their reactions. Eric.
Good evening, Veronica. Right now, NATO nations are divided on active participation in the war. Most are resisting direct involvement, preferring defensive action only, while some European nations, notably Germany, have expressed sympathy for the goals of the U.S. and Israel. Others are actively avoiding the conflict altogether. And then there is Spain, who is outspoken in criticism of the U.S. Republicans here on Capitol Hill say Iran's nuclear threat is a worldwide issue and all NATO countries need to get on board.
You need all your allies on the same side, pulling the same direction with great strength and solidarity. The problem I'm seeing now with some of our European friends, they're not as strongly with us as some of our frenemies in the region are.
We're there when they need us, and they need to be there when we need them. And so I've been disappointed with some of the stuff that's going on in Great Britain, Spain in particular. Not the way the NATO countries should be operating. So I hope that they can recalibrate themselves and get back on track.
The British have allowed the U.S. to use its military bases and is sending 2 aircraft carriers to the region, while Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez strongly condemned the attacks and refused to allow U.S. forces to use Spanish bases for military operations against Iran. Spain has significant trade and investment ties with the United States. Despite that, NATO's chief says if the U.S. is attacked, NATO forces will be there.
So you can be assured, absolutely, if ever the U.S. will be under attack, your allies will be with you. Absolutely.
Iranian leaders warn European nations not to get involved.
If any country joins in the aggression against Iran, join America and Israel in the aggression against Iran, definitely they will be also legitimate targets for Iran retaliation.
Democrats feel NATO forces should stay out of the conflict.
Do you think that NATO should actually play a bigger role?
No.
Why is that, sir?
I don't think we should be playing a role. I don't think our military should be there, much less NATO's.
President Trump and Secretary Hegseth don't even appear to see them as allies any longer. This is one of the problems that's created when America chooses to fight constantly and find ways to disagree with allies as opposed to working with them.
The lack of a unified European reaction reflects the fundamental reality that Europe has relatively limited strategic weight in the conflict itself and faces an increasingly strained relationship with its most important ally, the United States. How will this all play out? Only time will tell. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Thanks, Eric. The Trump administration is reportedly preparing to announce a new economic agreement with Cuba. That's according to sources familiar with the plan. The deal is expected to focus on easing travel restrictions to Havana and creating new pathways for American private sector investment on the island. This move represents a shift in current policy, prioritizing economic engagement in key sectors like energy and tourism over traditional sanctions. While official details are still pending, the agreement could signal a significant change in diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Cuba. To discuss possible options for the U.S. government, we have Jason Pablet, president of the Global Liberty Alliance. Thank you so much for your time again. Now, President Trump has stated he will turn his attention to Cuba after dealing with Iran. What might this entail?
Well, Veronica, it's more than 65 years worth of policy challenges that the president is indicating he wants to tackle. This is part of his outreach to make sure that the Western Hemisphere is more secure for America. We saw what he did in Venezuela, and he's doing some other things in Nicaragua. But Cuba is one of the bigger challenges because, again, we have close to over 65 years now of conflict with Cuba.
Are there any actions Cuba would potentially take to avoid a military intervention, and is that even on the table?
I doubt it. I mean, I think Cuba, first of all, there's a U.S. military base in Cuba, as you know, Guantanamo Naval Base. So as far as we have a physical presence in Cuba and have had it for some time, I do think all instruments of state power have always been on the table. We saw what we did in Venezuela. We see what's happening in Iran. In Cuba, we have a roadmap that's been on the books since 1996. There are certain things that Cuba could do. Access to the U.S. market is a privilege, not a right of any nation. And Secretary Rubio has said that many times. And Cuba does have indicators of things that they can do to progressively make the relationship better with the U.S., including, talking about settling property claims, the money owed to American citizens is in billions of dollars, releasing Americans that are wrongfully detained in Cuba. There's one from Florida wrongfully detained since 2017. Its relationship with Russia, China, and Iran, and of course, the democratic indicators, which include freeing political prisoners, holding free and fair elections.
Now, there are some humanitarian issues with some 6 million Catholics in Cuba. The church has a more political role there than it traditionally does. So could the church help in negotiations between the U.S. administration and the Cuban government?
I believe there's two institutions in Cuba that will be central to whatever happens next. It includes the military, of course, which is more the economic, political side of this. But the Cuban Catholic Church, despite the persecution in Cuba, remember, Cuba has something, the communists have this thing called the religion police, the Office of Religious Affairs. In spite of that, institutionally, Cuba's Catholics are a strong part of Cuban culture. They've not been able to eradicate that despite the persecution. So the Catholic Church has been of needed ballast in a place that's very uncertain politically and frankly from the freedom of religion standpoint. And I do believe they have become and will continue to be part of that process. If the United States chooses to work with the Catholic Church, and I know they will play an important role in that transition and can hopefully maybe bring parties together.
Jason Poblet, thank you so much for all of your insights.
Thank you, Veronica.
New video shows the moments a bomb-like device was thrown at a protest in New York City.
Tell everyone else.
A group of anti-Islamic protesters outside the mayor's mansion was met by another group of counter-protesters. 2 devices were thrown, and the NYPD says at least one of the devices was an improvised explosive capable of causing serious injury or death. The men who threw the devices may have been inspired by ISIS.
2 men, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kayumi, traveled from Pennsylvania and attempted to bring violence to New York City. They are suspected of coming here to commit an act of terrorism. The police department has determined that these were improvised explosive devices made to injure, maim, or worse.
In all, 6 men were arrested in connection with the events. No injuries were reported. We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. New envoy, the Holy See, names its new bridge between the Vatican and the United States. And Pope Leo continues his pastoral tour of Rome's peripheries, calling for peace. Pope Leo has appointed Archbishop Gabriele Caccia as the new Apostolic Nuncio to the United States. Since 2019, he served as permanent observer of the Holy See to the United Nations in New York. He succeeds Cardinal Christophe Pierre. Archbishop Caccia said he was honored and deeply humbled by the decision of the Holy Father to appoint him as nuncio to the country and the church where the Pope was born and raised. Joining us now from Rome is Francis X. Rocca, Senior Vatican Analyst at EWTN News. Thank you so much for your time.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
While he is an Italian-born veteran Vatican diplomat, what else do we know, and how might this impact relations between the U.S. and the Holy See?
Well, he's had a very distinguished career. He is a graduate of the Pontifical Ecclesiastical Academy, which is an elite training ground for diplomats. He was the Assessor of General Affairs, which is the #3 post in the Secretariat of State, which really a person who's had a lot of responsibility for what goes on day to day in the Vatican. And then he's had some very important diplomatic posts. He was the nuncio to Lebanon and to the Philippines. And then most recently, for the last 6 years, he's been the permanent observer of the United Nations in New York. So those are all in different ways relevant to his new job.
And in addition, some other highlights from his background that you think could be relevant and beneficial for his new role.
Well, I think, you know, the nuncio to Lebanon is very important for a number of reasons. Most obviously, you know, right now we've seen the conflict in the Middle East, and he was smack in the middle of it. And perhaps a way that's less obvious, Lebanon is, you know, probably has the biggest burden of refugees in the world. 30% of its population is composed of refugees, if you can imagine that. And so that's a big issue. Obviously, migration is a big issue in the United States, and he'll be dealing with that as the representative of the Holy See, which has been critical, like the U.S. bishops, of the immigration policies of the Trump administration. So that's relevant. The Philippines is a Catholic superpower, but it's also one in which internally they have some tension and conflict between the Catholic majority and the Muslim minority. So again, that's something that's relevant to what's going on in the Middle East. And of course, having been at the United Nations, he's been in the United States now for 6 years. So inevitably, he's going to have a heightened awareness and be very well informed about what's going on there.
And what do you think Cardinal Christophe Pierre's legacy will be?
Well, he had to manage the relationship at a very difficult time. There was a lot of tension between the Holy See and the U.S. bishops, particularly, and also with the United States under both President Trump and President Biden. There was a question about what to prioritize in their agenda. A lot of the U.S. bishops, the majority of the U.S. bishops, wanted to make the threat of abortion the #1 priority, the preeminent priority. Pope Francis's closest allies were not so keen on that, so there was tension about that, and also how to deal with the Biden administration over that. But going back to Cardinal Pierre, he had to manage that, and I think by all accounts, he did do as well as he could to kind of smooth things out. But he acknowledged himself when he was interviewed with us that there was tension.
As always, you give us so much great information. Francis X. Roca, Senior Vatican Analyst at EWTN News. Thank you.
Thanks, Veronica.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, to the peripheries, Pope Leo makes another pastoral visit, sharing a few impromptu words with the faithful. See what he had to say. Pope Leo is once again calling for an end to the war in Iran.
Eleviamo la nostra umile preghiera al Signore.
We humbly lift our prayer to the Lord, that the roar of bombs may cease, that weapons may fall silent, and that a space for dialogue may open up to hear the voice of the people.
The Holy Father made the comments after praying the Angelus in St. Peter's Square on Sunday. He expressed his profound consternation about the war and how it was destabilizing Lebanon, a bulwark for Christians in the predominantly Muslim region. Pope Leo XIV continues his pastoral visits to parishes in the peripheries of Rome. During his 4th parish visit this weekend, he encouraged young people to reject violence and instead become builders of peace and reconciliation. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Sedegren has more.
Pope Leo traveled on Sunday to Santa Maria della Presentazione, marking his 4th visit to one of Rome's outer parishes since mid-February. In his homily, the Pope reflected on the Gospel account of Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well and explained that the Gospel speaks to the community's life and the challenges people face.
Non mancano situazioni di marginalità che preoccupano.
There is no lack of troubling situations of marginalization, material, and moral poverty. Even adolescents and young people risk growing up deceived by those who would peddle death or disillusioned about the future. Many are waiting for a home, a job that will ensure a dignified life, safe environments where they can meet, play, and plan something beautiful together.
Progettare insieme qualcosa di bello.
The Holy Father encouraged the faithful to move forward with trust and urged parishes to welcome, listen to, and support all those who come to them, without condemnation or judgment.
A voi il compito.
You have the urgent and liberating task of showing the closeness of Jesus, his desire to redeem our existence from the ills that threaten it with a proposal for a just, true, and full life.
At his arrival, Pope Leo greeted the children waiting outside the parish, including a group of young Ukrainians dressed in their traditional attire. During the encounter, they asked for advice on preparing to meet Jesus and on supporting one another during difficult moments. And the Pope invited the little ones to talk to Jesus and entrust him with their worries and difficulties.
Gesù è vicino a noi.
Jesus is close to us. Let us open our eyes and recognize that he is present, even in the person next to us, in the one who is suffering, in the person without a home or a place to sleep on the street, in the sick. Jesus is present in all those circumstances.
In quelle circostanze.
After greeting the youngest members of the parish, the Pope met with the elderly and the sick, cared for by Caritas, where, alongside Cardinal Vicar Baldo Reina and Cardinal Francesco Montenegro, he offered a few impromptu words.
Today, we are holding a little conclave with 2 cardinals beside me, His Eminence Cardinal Montenegro, and as always, the Vicar Cardinal Baldo, and the future, soon-to-be Auxiliary Bishop of Rome, Monsignor Stefano, who is with us. We greet him. I say this about the conclave because today a lady reminded me that it has been 10 months since I was called to serve as Bishop of Rome.
Finally, the Pope reminded the volunteers that they are living signs of God's love for those who suffer and that every person they serve has infinite worth. In Rome, Benedikt Cedergren for EWTN News Nightly.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.